Welcome to the Northbridge Podcast, a little corner of the internet where we get real about life, faith, and everything in between. My name's Tony Turner, and it is my joy today to share these next few minutes with you. Perhaps you're familiar with David, and specifically the story about David and Goliath. You know that story, that Goliath, this super imposing giant who's standing in front of Israel's army, defiant, mocking God, mocking the army of Israel, mocking Israel itself, and challenging, calling forth for a challenge between a champion for Israel and Goliath. And of course, you know the story that the whole army, including King Saul, are terrified of Goliath. They take his threats seriously. They take his mocking seriously. They repel from God being mocked and God being critiqued by Goliath. And it's David, this shepherd boy, who stands up, who trusts in God, and who faces down Goliath. During that battle sequence and during that whole time, the thing that is so encouraging to me, the thing that stands out to me, is how David was able to oppose Goliath, and he did it with confidence and he did it with optimism. You know, the reality is in life, you might not face down a literal giant in front of you, but you will face giants in your life. You will face imposing death. You will face disease. You will potentially face losing a home or a marriage breaking up. Perhaps you're finding financial crisis, or your children are making horrible decisions and you feel powerless in helping them. There's a giant in front of you and you don't have courage, you don't have confidence, you don't have optimism in the midst of it. How do you get the confidence that David had? How do you get the optimism that David owned when he faced Goliath? Well, you develop the same kind of habits that David developed in his life. You know, I find it interesting because the Bible records that David picked up 5 smooth stones. Now, we believe that he picked up those 5 stones because David was in his mind thinking, I'm not going to only have to fight Goliath, but I'm going to have to fight his 4 brothers who are as big and as imposing as he is. And so I believe he picked up those 5 stones because he was prepared to fight 5 giants that day. He only fought 1, though. But just as David had 5 stones, I would argue there are 5 different habits we see that were developed in David's life that gave him confidence and optimism. David, one of the things he did was he tuned into God on a regular basis. Psalm 5 verse 3 says this: "In the morning, Lord, you hear my voice. I meet with you in the morning." It was David's normal job, his normal experience was every day to connect with God. He tuned into God on a daily basis. We call that having a quiet time, having some time where you're reading God's word and you're praying and you're listening to God and you're trying to figure out how to line up your day with what God's will is for your life. Now, David said, I do this in the morning time, and whether you do in the morning, the afternoon, noontime, or at dinner, or in the evening time, I don't know. I've not been thoroughly convinced that there is something very specific and better having it at one time versus the other. But I would just argue, do it daily. Figure out how to tune into God on a regular, daily basis. A second habit that David developed that gave him confidence and courage and optimism when facing Goliath was that he would take in God's promises. Psalm 119, verse 95, David writes, "Though the wicked hide along the way to kill me, I will keep my mind upon your promises." David's given this incredible picture that he's saying, look, there are people gathering around the road that are trying to destroy me, trying to destroy my life, and I could be fretting about them. I could be focused on them. I could be making plans on countering their evil. But God, I choose to look to you. God, I choose to think on your promises. God, I trust in your promises more than my ability to get me out of this jam. And that's what he developed. So you make time to take in God's promises and begin to own those in your life. A third thing that David developed was he learned to trust in God's deliverance even when it was in the darkest hour. In Psalm 42, verse 11, he writes, "Don't be discouraged. Don't be upset. Expect God to do incredible things." What was David doing? David was trusting. He was trusting that God would deliver him, and God will deliver you as well. A fourth principle to live is what I say, tout God's power. He writes, remember me when you show favor. Lord, come to my aid. This is found in Psalm 106, verse 4. He's saying, God, remember me. Remember me when you are putting forth your mercy, when you're distributing your power in the world. Will you remember who I am? Why? Because David had confidence in God's power. He had confidence in knowing that God could take care of him. And so he was able to have confidence in bad situations. And then a final thing that could go underreported or something that we just overlook, but this is so important. A fifth habit to build in our lives is that we would take time to talk with other believers. David was never totally alone in his life. He always had support. He had, at the end of his life, he had his band of mighty men that surrounded him and that were there for him to fight during the thick and the thin. In Psalm 109, David writes, I am a friend to those committed to living by your rules, O God. He saying, hey, God, I want to be around people who live for you. I want to be around people who love you. I want to be around people who take your word seriously. And so David took time to make those people his friends. And so we should be the same way. Take time to look around in your life, in your church, in your family, in your community for those people who take God's word seriously and connect with them. That means being a part of a small group. That means that not living like an island, not living in isolation to everyone around you. Do you have a giant that you need to defeat today? Well, I would challenge you to take on the habits that David took. And you'll be able to face those giants with confidence and optimism. This has been the Northbridge podcast, where faith meets life and where we counter life's gut punches with grace, grit, and a little bit of gospel truth. Hey, if you liked this, understand and know that we also have this podcast, this format drops. A fresh episode drops every Thursday afternoon, and you can find that if you want to just have an audio version of it. You can find that on wherever you go to get podcasts. If you have an Android or if you have an Apple device, they are on both platforms, and it's just simply found at the Northbridge Church Podcast, and you can download that and get that to your phone every week. I hope to see you and hear from you next week. Have a great rest of your week.